Welcome to the Abiding CEO podcast where faith meets business. I'm your host, Betsy Mejia, therapist, trauma coach, and business coach all in one. And here we have today Emily Chang. Now, Emily is a local business owner. She is the owner of Birch Salon, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, Betsy. I'm so excited to be here. This is the first time I've done something like this, so it's exciting. Thank you for having me on. Thanks for inviting me on. Yes, I'm Emily Chang. I am from this area, from this small town. I am a business owner. Yes, I have been in the industry for about 18 years. Also a mom. I have two children. I have two boys. One is 12 and one will be 3 at the end of July. So lots of space there between them. Also lots of fun. And married to a wonderful husband. His name is T.
Okay, awesome. I'm so glad you're on. And I thought of you when I first started this podcast and I knew I wanted you on, but things didn't line up and now you're here. So I'm so glad to
It
have
lined
you
up
here.
perfectly.
And I really want to show people that these principles, these biblical principles apply to so many industries. And
Yeah.
as a customer at your salon, I've seen firsthand just how well structured it is and it's peaceful and the people. I've just had a wonderful experience and watched you grow through the years. But I'm going to backtrack a little bit because before we started recording, you told me an interesting story of your upbringing, and I was really surprised by it. And go ahead and tell our audience.
How I grew up, right?
Yeah.
So definitely not traditional. I grew up on a farm, on a chicken farm. And I told Betsy, when I say farm, these days people think like it's really cool to have chickens these days. It was not cool when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
But these days people have like chickens and chicken coop, but it wasn't like 10, 20 chickens. It was like 25,000 chickens and cows and pigs and horses and like the whole gamut. But that's what my parents did for a living. So from the time I was 4 to 17, that's what we did. And it was in this area. Obviously, it was a lot quieter back then. It was actually in Bethlehem, but that was pre-Target and all the shops out there. But it also was just a very different life. And at the time, and I didn't mention this to you earlier, but at the time when I was younger, I think there was a lot of resentment for me and a lot of frustration for me in that life because I didn't feel like I chose it for myself and it was very slow. And if you know me, I'm a very go person. And so it didn't always align with me and who I am. And because of that, sometimes I think I struggled to find happiness within that life. But funny enough, in hindsight, 2020, right? It was those years of quiet when the Lord made me be still and made me listen. And I took time to form a relationship with him and really get to know him. And he was my best friend for a lot of years. And like everybody else, I had things I went through, in preteen, teen years that were struggles and hard. And it was me turning to him in those quiet moments that honestly these days in the hustle and bustle of life and motherhood and business ownership and whatever, I'm constantly struggling and striving to find that same quiet and peace, but it was an experience that I think most people don't get that I am so thankful for now as I've gotten older, just the years of building that relationship and listening to the Lord and that I didn't really even know at the time was unique,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's how I grew up. Very different, I think, than most people around
Yeah,
here.
I love it because essentially what you're saying is being out on the farm, taking care of the chickens and the animals and everything going on allowed you to be spiritually formed and develop that relationship with God, which now we have to set aside time and be so intentional.
Right.
But your upbringing allowed you
Right.
to experience him.
And it created a solid foundation, for me there that I didn't know was being built at the time. And my parents still have a farm. They don't have the chicken farm anymore, but they still have a farm. And my dad always says, like, God's the loudest when you're on the farm. Like God speaks the loudest in nature. And it's so true. And I think it's just the pace and the speed, that life lives. But goes.
And God speaks the loudest in nature. I don't know if you're into walking trails or hiking, but there is such a beauty about it, right?
It's true. And just seeing God's creation. And I don't know how many other people feel this way, but the beach is like that for me. Like you go and you like step on the beach and it's like just the awe of how huge it is and like how great God is, how vast it is. It hits me. It doesn't matter if we go every year, it hits me year after year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's feeling, but it's like that. Yeah.
Oh, I love the beach. I can sit on a lawn chair for hours just watching the waves come in and out. And
it's like your piece.
Yes, no, I'm a beach and a mountain girl, depending on the time of the year and the mood.
Yeah.
But let's fast forward a little bit because I wasn't aware that you've actually been in the styling hair industry for 18 years and you were previously a teacher. So all of that kind of prepared you for today. Tell us more about that season.
Yeah, so early on in my career, this will take some people back, but because I'm a little bit older, but now, children have insurance benefits through their parents till they're like 26. Well, okay, when I grew up, that was not the case. So,
Yeah.
you finish school, which for me was, I mean, I guess I was 20 and 19 or 20 when I finished school, or at least my cosmetology license before I went back. But at that point, I needed insurance benefits. And that was really hard to find as a stylist behind the chair. And so I had always kind of liked the idea, even when I was in cosmetology school, of like helping other people. And
Mm.
that's really where this was born from. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to school so that I can teach cosmetology, have some insurance benefits and some stability for myself. I've always been very independent.
Mhm.
And so that was how I kind of got into teaching. But I taught for several years and then I developed curriculum, helped develop curriculum for cosmetology school, and then was their director of education for a while before I had my first baby, Hudson.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
now that continues because I have noticed that there's mannequins and there's girls with less experience helping the ones with more experience. And I just love that concept of, just helping the next generation. And
Right.
it also sounds like pursuing your passion,
Mhm.
which sometimes outside looking in can seem a little risky, but
Mhm.
you were able to find predictability and safety in a school.
Mhm.
Tell
Mhm.
me about when you left the school and had to branch off on your own, because that can be scaring. A lot of us, we start off in these corporate jobs or these safe, secure settings to bet on
Right.
ourselves.
Right. Yeah, it was terrifying. And actually, when I left the school, I didn't leave the school to do my own thing. I actually left the school to be home with Hudson. I was working a lot of hours at the school in that position. And funny enough, I didn't know anything about being a mom. Listen, I can raise chickens apparently, but mom life, I was the baby of the family. I didn't know anything about children, keeping them alive, loving on them, any of the things. And so it was a shock for me when I had Hudson.
Mhm.
It's just a lot, right? And you
Yeah.
see growing up, you see these moms on TV who do it all, right? Who are corporate moms and then they're great moms and then they're
Mhm.
and what life and age and maturity teaches you is that you can't be everything to everybody all the time. You have to pick and choose what really is important to you. And that was that moment for me when I had Hudson,
Mhm.
because I went on maternity leave thinking I was going to go back to the school. And in my lack of knowledge mind, immature mind, I thought, oh, I'll have a baby and then we'll go back to normal just with a baby. And as you know, as a mom, that's just not, they turn the world upside down,
Yeah.
right? In the most beautiful way. But so I had him, was on maternity leave, and I felt like I can't, like I cannot just leave him. I feel like the Lord has entrusted me with this baby, and I barely know what I'm doing. I'm barely am surviving at this point. I have
Yeah.
no sleep, whatever. I don't feel like I can leave him for someone else to raise. I just couldn't do it. And
Mhm.
so at that point, my husband is a mechanic, or was a mechanic for 20 years. And so both of us, survived for a long time off of commissioned positions. But in that season, I was a salaried position and I was the secure income for our family at that point that just was
Mhm.
consistent. So leaving that safety and security was absolutely terrifying for us. And it was one of those, just it was a God leap, is what I like to say, because it was one of those decisions that was just like,
Yeah.
I don't know what's on the other side. And honestly, Betsy, I don't take a lot of those. I'm very much a planner, very much but I just knew in that season that it wasn't an option. And so I quit the school to be home with him. And then out of necessity, kind of started doing hair a little bit on the side, part-time, to
Okay.
help supplement income for our family. And then kind of the vision grew in my heart of owning something, or really just helping people grow into success in the industry. It took me a long time. It took me probably 10 years to figure out the business side of our business and how
Mhm.
to combine business skills with the art of hair. Because, a lot of us as stylists are artistic and fun and creative. But if you're not also being wise when it comes to business, then you're not building something long term for yourself that really is worth you being away from your family, right?
Mhm.
And so it took me a long time to learn how to do that. And it kind of just a little seed was planted of, oh my gosh, if I could help other people do this, and not take 10 years and figure out, okay, I can be mom, I can be wife, I can be all these things. I can also do hair, and serve people in that way, but make a good income for my family. And so that was really, the dream was kind of born in that time when I really found success myself doing clients and making an income of it. And that business grew very quickly. And to the point where for the last probably year and a half that I was doing hair, before I opened the salon, I wasn't really taking new clients. I didn't have the room or space for it. And I tell this story a lot, but I would work 14-hour days doing hair because I loved my clients. I love serving my clients. But there were times where at nighttime I was cleaning up, after all the clients, I would cry while I was cleaning because I was just so tired. It's just so
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah.
But I also loved it and I needed to provide an income for my family and, all the things. And so anyways, I felt like the Lord had placed kind of that vision in me to help grow other people. But I also felt like he was saying, like, for now, be still. And that is not my personality either.
Yeah.
And I went
Yeah.
through a lot of seasons when I was younger of working so hard to force things to happen, right? And
Yeah.
I was able to do that. Like there are industries that I was in sales and stuff like that and found a lot of success in it very quickly. But it's because I sacrificed other things, which you and I've kind of, talked about,
Yeah.
and pushed so hard to make it happen. And this was the first time that I was like, okay, Lord, if it's meant to be, it will be. And in your timing, it will be. And I'm just going to trust whatever that is because I love doing hair. And if this is what you called me to do forever, is serve the guests in my chair, I love that. And I'm
Yeah.
happy with that. And that's awesome. And if it's more than that, I'll follow wherever I feel like you're leading me. And at that season, I felt like he was saying, just be still, like, be still, be mom. I gave you this baby. I entrusted you with this. And so for a year and a half, I forced myself through a
Yeah.
lot of prayer to be
Yeah.
still and not do that, not take it to the next step. And soon after, Hudson went to school a few months after I opened the salon.
Yeah.
Um,
I hear you. I went through a season. And again, one of the things we were talking about before we started recording and we're coming back to is this idea of adjusting your work, your business based on your home life and expectations. So I did have to hold back on opening a business and have just a 9 to 5 corporate job so I could be home with the kids in the afternoon and have our weekends, and waited till my youngest got to pre-K before I even ventured off or did something like this. Because as much as I want to grow, scale, God's not going to have me sacrifice the family he blessed me with to pursue money.
mhm,
And that's tough. And I'm not saying I always get it right. There are times where I do get caught up in the hamster wheel and I find myself working too much. And then I have to be very intentional to pull back and prioritize. One of my go-to when it comes to prioritizing is God, husband, kids, then everything else. So when I make
mhm,
decisions, sometimes I have to ask myself, okay, how is this going to affect my relationship with God? How is this going to affect my marriage? How is this going to affect my kids? And sometimes that means
mhm.
saying no to opportunities. Are there any opportunities you feel like you've had to say no to because it just wasn't the right season for your family?
Yeah, I think that what we just spoke of is an example of that. But also, there's a lot of people actually that don't know this, but I was in the works of opening a location. It was in 2019, I think, in Brazelton. And there was a salon location there. Everything was set to go the night before. I got a call from the owner saying that she was backing out, basically. And at that time, it's so funny because through my life, thank you, Jesus, for this lesson. Through my life, I have learned that, number one, sometimes I'm so stubborn that Lord closes doors for me, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Right. And even though, and I remember people checking on me and going, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm okay. Like, is it sad? It is. But also, I know that if that's not meant to be, and that's not what God has for me, that he has something better for me.
Mhm.
And in hindsight, right after that, COVID happened. Right. And that was a huge makeup. Right.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even a year later. COVID happened. And then of course we got pregnant and then, had our little guy, Lincoln, that we
Yeah.
had been trying for 9 years. And so anyways, the Lord always knows best. So sometimes, yes, I've chosen to be still. And sometimes I don't do that well. And God closes the door for me.
Mhm.
And that's okay too. And
Yeah.
I'm thankful.
I'm going back to actually, I want to say when we first met, it was shortly after COVID. You were pregnant, you came over, and I just knew I had to talk to you. And you kind of challenged me on a
Uh-huh.
business aspect. I don't know if you remember this. We had a whole conversation about 1099 or
Oh no.
W-2, but you totally
Oh.
planted that seed. I didn't actually flip to W-2 until 2021, But
Mhm.
that conversation stayed with me. And what is the difference? I didn't even think
Mhm.
about it. I was just copying what other people did. And then it's like, wow, it really
Mhm.
matters. And I want to say in the salon industry is very similar. How did you know to go the W-2 route?
That's a great question. So the Lord placed the right people in my life. I have an amazing accountant, Lisa, and she is very typical of an accountant in that she's very like has it all together, right? But she also is a Christian,
Mhm.
but she also has a very strong sense of morality and what's right and what's wrong. And so when I started the business and started the company, I don't know that I was with her at the time. I think I talked to my accountant at the time, but Lisa really has been the driving force in educating me on how beneficial that is to your employees. Because in our industry, probably like yours, I think we talked about, it's not common. A
No.
lot of people do 1090 because it is easier, right? On the
Mhm.
salon owner or the, business owner,
Yeah.
it's an easier route to take, but it also doesn't allow protections for the employees. And I think a lot of people in our industry aren't educated on the differences either. And so they
Mhm.
don't necessarily know, that, hey, the employer has to contribute to your taxes and the employer has to ensure that you're making a minimum wage and all these things that are protections there for them as a W-2, as a
Mhm.
1099 aren't there. I think that they
Mhm.
aren't very aware of that. But anyway, so the seed was planted for me, I think, just through researching initially and then really through my amazing accountant who educated me well
Well,
on that.
I'm grateful for God using your accountant to tell you and then using you to tell me. And then months later, it was like, oh, that does make sense. But that's how we do. We learn from each other. And that takes humility. Okay,
And
so I'm gonna
you
switch.
don't know until you don't until it's
You really
like,
don't. Some stuff you figure it out when you come to it.
yep.
Now I'm gonna switch gears a little bit because the other thing you mentioned, and this was an interesting question that was presented to you. Someone asked you, how come you don't open a second location?
Mm, yeah, I get asked this actually a lot.
Mhm.
But I was telling Betsy, a couple of members of our team, Lindsay and Catherine and myself went and taught at a local high school that has a cosmetology program yesterday. And it was so neat. And it's always so cool to get to see kind of the next generation and
Yeah.
excited for them about what's next. They're in that scary period of like making decisions in their life. And anyways, so we loved it. But in that class, I had a student ask me, when are you going to open your second location or why haven't you already opened your second location?
Yeah.
And I was telling Betsy, that is the business owner's version of keeping up with the Joneses. Like there's a lot of pressure. The pressure never ends, right? It's like you have a baby and then when are you going to have another one? And then, same thing with
Yeah.
business. You open a business and it's like, oh, that's great. Congratulations. All right. When are you opening another one? When are you
Mhm.
expanding? When are you opening up a different, I had somebody ask me the other day, when are you opening up a spa portion? Like all these expectations, right? And I think we all fight that, the not wanting to get caught up in keeping up with the Joneses and sometimes getting
Mhm.
caught up and reeling yourself back in and all that. But for me, I have said since the beginning, and Betsy, I think you know this, but we opened the salon in a very small location. That's not our first location. Do you know that?
I remember that there was another location, but I didn't jump in until you guys were on Broad Street.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So when we initially opened, we opened in a 600 square foot space. Like, I mean, it was tiny. It was basically like a salon closet. And there were 4 stations and a bathroom and a nook, and that's pretty much it.
I don't even know how they did that.
Oh, it's insane. So we would like mix color, reaching over people, sitting on laps, take a bite of food. Like it was wild. And it started with just two of us and then grew. But about 8 months in or so, there were 8 of us in 4 stations, and the water started to run cold for clients. And it was like, okay, like we've got to expand. And so we started looking for locations. The Lord made this one available. We built it out. Here we are. But with all that said, at that point, I was behind the chair full time. And when I started the salon company, it wasn't to be an owner or not be behind the chair. And that's another thing of pressure in our industry of like,
Mm,
oh, are you still behind the
that's a
chair?
good
Are you
one.
not? Right. So there's a lot of pressure there to not be behind the chair, but work on your business. And to me, I'm not a believer necessarily in that. I think there are pros and cons to both for
Yeah.
sure. And you
Yeah.
have to know what season is right for you. But for me, I never opened the business to not do hair. I was in love with doing hair. I love my clients. I love being able to serve and love on people. And that gave me the opportunity to do what I feel like the Lord called me to do in that way. And so when we opened, I have said the whole time, you know what? If this grows, I will follow the lead, and I will continue to do what I feel like the Lord's called me to do in loving people and pouring into people and trying to help people. And if that means growth, I'll follow it. If it doesn't mean growth, that's okay. That's okay. Like, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm happy in this season. I love doing hair at that point. I love where we are now. I love our team now. And I try to keep myself, and I don't always do it well, right? But I try to keep myself centered on the fact of like, I'm thankful for where we are. And
Mhm.
if that means we stay there, thank you, Jesus. And if that means we grow, thank you, Jesus. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I definitely am not going to, I'm not willing to overextend myself financially or in a way that's not good for the team to open a second location because that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yep. No, I totally hear you. And what you were talking about, this idea of how much to work in versus on the business, that's been ongoing. And I'm actually being disobedient because I did have a mentor. I still see clients and I enjoy that piece. I see less clients than I used to, but I did have a mentor tell me like, Betsy, there's going to come a point where you need to focus on managing and leading and think about the impact you have through others. I still struggle with that, but I see that day coming because there
Mhm,
is so much
mhm.
that goes on. And then the bigger your team gets, the more attention to detail, maybe the more marketing, the making sure that the new person still gets the same mission and vision that the more veteran or your longest employee has. Just quality
Yeah.
assurance. Like you don't want to be
Yes,
so in the weeds that you're not even paying attention to what others are doing. How do you,
absolutely.
yeah, like how do you deal with that?
So for me, I didn't step out from behind the chair completely until after or right when I was about to have our almost 3-year-old, our 2-year-old.
Mhm.
Um, I had reduced my time behind the chair, right? So when we first started the business, I was working Monday, Thursday, Friday, and I was working 12 to 14-hour shifts, Monday, Thursday, Friday. And I was working some Saturdays. And then we always laugh because in hindsight, we didn't have laundry in our first location, right? So I would get off at 11:30 p.m. and come home and wash laundry from the day and dry it and then bring it back up to the salon. And we would all sit on the couch and fold and talk and whatever every morning. So it's wild. Like every season I look back and go, how did I do that? You know what I mean? And it's like the Lord just made me able. I don't even know.
Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't even seem physically possible. But anyways, fast forward as time went on, I did reduce my time behind the chair to be home with my family more and create balance, but also to help serve the team as it was growing. But this is a lesson that I have very much, it's a newer lesson to me when I was pregnant with Lincoln. I got to the end of my pregnancy with him and I finally realized what this means because what was happening to me is I was behind the chair. I had 2 associates that I was working with and teaching. And then, of course, the team had grown. And when the computer, the internet went down in the front, people were coming to me and saying, hey, the internet's down. What do we do? We have a client who's not happy with their services over on the left over here. What do we do with that? We have
Mhm.
this plan next week. I can't come because I have something going on with my kids. It was just trying to manage all of those things. It finally came to a head and got to a point where I felt like I wasn't doing any of it well. And gosh, that's a terrible feeling when you're trying to put everything you have into all of it and it's just not enough. But I remember that breaking point of tears for me, of I'm not serving anyone well. And so something's got to give. And that was when that and then the new baby coming was when I decided to, not be behind the chair anymore. And I've even dabbled in it recently because I missed doing hair. And so there's a few clients that I've served recently. And unfortunately, the same feeling keeps coming back of like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm just not doing my best here, my best here, my best here. And it's hard. It's hard. But I think, growing when you and your business in your specific situation, when you know it's time and you feel called to do that and not because it's the next logical step.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still hanging in there because I like it. We like what we do. That's why we got into the field to begin with and making that way for the
Well,
next
Betsy, I think I
person.
lost you.
Uh-oh. Well, let's give it a second.
Okay.
All right. We're back. All right. Well, it's really fun chatting and we can go on and on for hours.
Absolutely.
One way that I do like to wrap up the episodes is what is an advice you have for other abiding CEOs? What would you say to them?
Know that your journey is going to be your journey. That would probably be my biggest bit of advice. Try to carve out time for all the things that are important. And like Betsy said, keep your priorities. If you get off track, because you will, because there's so many plates spinning all the time, coming back to that and kind of retreating back to that and retreating back to the Lord and what he's calling you to do specifically, and not what others expect you to do or the pressures that are there, not caving to that, but really just following your path. And that's so hard because I know a lot of times we want answers for like, what should I do and what's next? And I've been there.
Mm.
But I don't think that necessarily the Lord designed your journey to be like anyone else's, and that's okay. And if you're following what he's calling you to do and his word says, and you're on the right path, like you got to trust that piece of it.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. Well, Emily, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed our conversation. I really enjoy your salon, and
Aw.
you're doing good work in the community, and I hope other people sense it. You're definitely serving with excellence, and I just thank you. I'm so glad that we met, and
Yeah.
for your willingness to come on here and be vulnerable and transparent.
Well, thank you. And congratulations on all your success. You're doing amazing things. And we're so thankful to have you as a client and in the community as well. You're making such a difference, and we love you.
Thank you. Love you too.